Hello and welcome to Global Television. It's a delight to always have you join us here on Media Discourse. I'm Uyag Mofwegwe, live in Abuja, Nigeria's capital. Let's get the conversation on the road, everyone. Nigeria is one country that is challenged on many levels across many fronts. As a matter of fact, one of the issues Nigeria is currently dealing with is unemployment, which has further complicated the economic challenges of this otherwise very, very great country. However, when the government announced recently that the Ajakuta steel mill, which is, as we hear, the biggest in Nigeria, now is 98% complete, and upon completion has the potential of creating at least 500,000 jobs, it was perhaps a time for most Nigerians to also heave a sigh of relief on the one hand. On the other hand, for many other people, it brought back memories of several promises that failed, one administration after another. But the federal government now, under the leadership of President Bola Tinubu, is, who knows, maybe thinking differently, thinking radically, by saying, look, we can, if you like, drive an initiative around EXPATS employment in such a way that we help Nigerians secure jobs across several critical factors. On the one hand, we're providing opportunities for our people. On the other hand, we're also making money, or if you like, saving money for the country. This is a government that is in office for the 7th month. Has this government built enough trust with the people? Is there so much of confidence already by the people in this government to say, look, we throw our weight behind this initiative and we believe government will deliver along this line? That's the conversation we're having on the show today. I'm joined by Professor Biodun Adeni of Base University here in Abuja. Thank you, Prof, for joining us on the program.
Thank you, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So would you just be kind enough to help us with an insight into what exactly this means? Because for every young graduate watching now, his interest probably is, how does this give me an opportunity to jump into the labor market?
Okay, from what I've been reading in the newspapers, I find that initiative very promising. And of course, it's coming against the background of government's long-term intention to broaden its revenue base away from oil, which has made us to be a monocultural economy over the years. And in the circumstance, we are faced with declining resources because of the volatility of the oil sector, which is why attention is now being ramped up in the area of getting revenue from other sectors like agriculture, like mineral resources, like steel development, which you alluded to earlier on. And of course, there are some other sectors that government can begin to look at in the future, like tourism, for instance. Tourism can be very, very rewarding. In those days, we were told that our health sector was very vibrant, such that foreign nationals, Saudi Prince, it was reported, once visited the famous University College Hospital in Ibadan. So medical tourism, of course, if our medical sector is well enhanced, can also be a potential, for income generation. But the approach that I've read about, which government is thinking about now, and I consider it interesting, and I consider it soft and short-term, is the inclusion of expatriates, in the revenue stream. And how will this happen? Yes, our country is open to expatriates. We'll have them in different sectors, in construction, in mining, in oil and gas, and in agriculture to a very large extent, So when these people come, how much benefit do we get from them? Apart from personal income tax. Personal income tax is the regular tax that every citizen that is working pays, But how much income do we get other than this personal income tax? I think government is trying to introduce some other kind of fees, really, that will probably maybe discourage their participating in areas where Nigerians have the capacity to participate in.
Right.
Yes, if you can pay the fees, fine, but if you cannot, it means that if you are discouraged by the fees, you are going to be leaving room, for qualified Nigerians to come into that sector, probably helping on their employment or unemployment, as the case could be. And other than that, of course, is to also imagine the number of aspirants that we have in this country. They are in excess of about 150,000 from what we have read. So if they are in excess of 150,000, you can imagine the revenue that will be coming from there. And of course, the estimate has put it at about 1.5 billion dollars annually.
Right, for next 20 years?
Yeah, so if government is making $1.5 billion from expatriates and from the fees, we don't know the details yet, but whatever it is, the projection is about 1.5 billion every year, dollars every year. So if government is making this kind of money, imagine the help it will give in terms of helping the government cushion the pains in a situation where we are resorted to the economics of borrowing to survive. And of course, how much money can we continue to borrow in a situation where we're even finding it difficult to pay the ones, that we borrowed in the past, in a situation where we're hearing government officials declaring that the country is bankrupt.
Right.
Of course, we know what bankruptcy means. And so this idea, this soft approach of getting expatriates to pay something else other than their personal income tax, looks creative and ingenious, and that's what we keep talking about. But there are so many areas in which government can begin to think about getting revenue, thinking out of the box, and not just standing in the traditional, following the patterns that have become really jaded, with new thinking, new initiative, not just for revenue's sake, but of course to deploy the revenues, for the good of the people, and considering the many aspirations and yearnings of citizens of this country.
I understand. I mean, in this narrative, there's the private sector element, no doubt about that. But the argument that the government has no business in business, or more specifically, that the government has no business creating jobs, how do we balance this out?
No, government definitely shouldn't. In ideal systems and societies, it is the private sector that drives the economy, except in controlled economies, in economies that are communist, or socialist. And even in those countries, you could see how China embraced liberalization.
That's right.
You could see how Russia embraced liberalism, such that we begin to see billionaires and multi-billionaires emerging from this country, such that we see how they have risen, becoming the most potent economies in the world. So we cannot undermine the fact that the private sector is very, very important, and that's why you see the private sector also supposedly driving this initiative through the instrumentality of the Ministry of Interior and the Nigerian Immigration Services. Of course, they will be at the helms of managing the process. Of course, they are in charge of documenting expatriates.
All of the paperwork.
Yeah, the paperwork, they will be in charge of it, and you expect the Ministry of Finance to be involved at some point as well. National planning should also be involved. But what I find interesting is that it's a public-private sector initiative. It's a PPP arrangement, whereby that will be driven by the private sector. Again, we don't know the details until the details we are told about the details. But I consider it creative in the sense that we're in an age where many citizens of this country are emigrating. And of course, stories have been told. The tales, are loud in places.
For the so-called Jackbar syndrome.
The Jackbar syndrome, how they have gone out there and populated those societies, and how they have helped in stimulating, in engendering and enhancing the economies of those countries. Not just through taxes, but of course through their skills and expertise. In many professionals, in many areas of professionalism. Medicine, law, engineering, teaching, etc., etc. And some countries are even deliberately targeting Nigerians because they are basically interested in immigration, in emigrating. So if our citizens are emigrating, and contributing to the growth of these other societies, what is wrong in us going a step further to get foreigners, immigrants, that are productive, to also be contributory, to our revenue base, much more than they are presently doing, much more than the fact that they are paying their tax regularly, like every other citizen, much more than they are helping in construction, building structures, or in oil and gas, in agriculture, in mining, and all of that. I think it's a welcome development, considering that many of these expatriates, consider Nigeria a very fertile ground for profit making. Sometimes because of our welcoming attitude, because we are hospitable, and of course because the atmosphere is a little bit freer for exploration in terms of assuming relaxed nature are disposition to embrace initiatives, and which many of these foreigners have aplenty.
You know, you just mentioned China a while ago. I mean, the world's second biggest economy, and China is, has found a strong footprint on the soil of Africa, and they continue to strengthen that every opportunity they get. I look at what they've done with our rail line, for example. For a country whose, if you like, regulatory frameworks are not so strong, also robust across sectors, won't countries as powerful as China also exploit these otherwise brilliant initiatives to the detriment of Nigeria and Nigerians?
No. Many of these countries also, they have actually been, they found ways of also tasking Nigerians and other foreigners, other nationals moving into their countries. If you look at the strongest countries in the world, those they receive more are citizens or immigrants from less developed countries. Look at the pattern of migration across the world. It's usually people moving from less developed countries to strong economies, because economy often drive migration. People are looking for better life, greener pasture. Economy comes first, maybe education, health will come second and third. And of course, these big countries are the greatest recipients, particularly countries in the West, because of history and all of that. So against that background, you expect that these countries have perfected ways of benefiting from these immigrants, through fees, and you pay different fees apart from the regular tax that you are taxed. Of course, I'm sure you know how much they do not joke with taxation. It is a very serious offense if you try to avoid
tax evasion
in those countries. They do not take. But beyond that, they also make monies in different areas, from immigrants. You pay a lot to become a citizen of any of this country. Even before you leave your country, of course, you and I know how much they will assess your financial worth. Your bank account is brought, and what you're going to do there is assessed. Your ability to contribute to the economy of that country is also investigated. All sorts of checks are conducted on you, But coming here now, you find that, we are a little more relaxed. Once the person qualifies, is going to be employed by country A, by company A or company B, and then of course you just open your door and the person comes, start working, making some money, repatriating it. In a situation where probably Nigerian citizens can even compete in that area, in a situation where probably some more money will probably have been made from that person, just like our citizens face when they go over there. So what I think government is just trying to do is to expand the net, their income net, by looking for other ways of benefiting from the adventurous expatriates who imagine Nigeria as a place, to express their productivity and efficiency, which is legitimate, coming after the fashion of what has been happening in their own climes.
Nigeria largely, obviously so, relies on oil, and for several years there have been these calls, and those calls have become more vehement very lately, as to the need for us to diversify the economy as quickly as possible. And what you always hear as an alternative is agriculture. But this appears to be a bit, radically different from that line of thoughts. Is this the answer to that question, or is it just one of the several components in the conversation?
It's just a good question, really. I think it's one of the components. And if you ask me, I think it's a soft measure. I will say I want to put it into two categories: the hard tactics and the soft tactics, or maybe the long-term tactics and the short-term tactics. The long-term tactics is agriculture. Agriculture can be long-term because there are so many countries that are experts in agricultural produce. Malaysia, Israel, Greece. Many of these countries are experts in agricultural produce. So before you grow, to compete with them, it might take time. What about steel development? Do not forget that our flagship steel industry was built for us by Russia. And if we're saying that, it means that, yes, we have the raw materials, and it has not even taken off many years after. Up to what extent do we think we can grow or develop it for it to be able to contest or compete in the international steel market? It's likely to take some time. So it's a long-term plan. Then the other one is mineral resources. Yes, we have it plenty, but we're not the most endowed in Africa. Congo, Brazzaville is there. And there's so many other countries as well. We have them aplenty. We are busy doing exploration. Every day we are doing studies. I've been privileged to be part of many of those studies. And even those studies, we are being encouraged to do them by foreign bodies, that are interested in helping us to grow our economy. So many studies, but of course, we haven't seen it taking off. And the new Minister of Steel Development was saying the other day that he's going to increase or try to increase, make sure that revenue from steel, forms about 30-something% of the nation's annual revenue. Good projection, no doubt, but for now, it's still less than 10%. Which is a shame considering the avalanche, how resourced this country is at the level of mineral resources, given our endowment. But every day we also see how tricky it has become for us to explore this sector because of questions of insecurity. Miners are often kidnapped, their lives are endangered, and sometimes we even hear of pilfering, stealing in Zamfara State, and many of these things. So it has become really very difficult for us to have it as a structured, decent, regulated way of raising money. So we also classify it as a long-term measure. So the short-term one that we could see that will become again in the immediate circumstance, seems to be this measure.
Right.
Getting some fees from additional fees from expatriates apart from the tax that they are paying. And of course, it's a win-win situation because it's not just saying that because you are a foreign company, you get taxed. No. As long as you are an expatriate, even if you are working in a Nigerian-owned company, of course, you just deserve you should pay some more fees or some more. We don't know what it is because of you see that you are taking the place of a Nigerian, and if you are not taking the place of a Nigerian, you are probably seeing some advantage in being in Nigeria. And of course, if you are doing that, it means that it shouldn't just go for free. There should be an extra income that you need to pay to your host country for the benefit of that country and for the sustainability of the system in which you are earning a living from.
Some reports have it that one of the reasons it's a bit difficult to attract foreign direct investment is on account of the fact that our system is too narrow, several bottlenecks. For example, to even, if you like, regularize a business can be a problem. One bribe after another, one person asking for favor here, the other person asking for their pants to be greased there, and so on and so forth. How do we also clear that path in such a way that this runs smoothly?
Yeah, it's been a very tricky one over time. In the passenger period, we have Savicom to enhance service delivery. And of course, in the Buhari administration as well, I remember when Vice President Oshibajo, when he was acting as president, signed passed an executive order on ease of doing business. And it remains at the level of intention, at the level of plan. Our being has often been execution, implementation. And people often find it difficult to comply. Compliance is also a problem because we are so used to circumventing processes. Massive Nigeria belongs to someone else other than ourselves. So maybe I should just say we are all taking advantage of the weakness of the country, which is why implementation is often a problem. But we are in dark times. The times we are in is a time where we all have to be serious, and the government even has to be much more serious because it has a role, of projecting or bringing a plan into the table and making sure that plan works. Otherwise, it will be one of regret, in a situation where our resources is completely thinning out. We used to rely heavily on oil. In our good days, we're producing $2.3 billion or $1 million per barrels per day. But at the time, it plummeted to about 700, 800, 900. And now we're just managing at 1.3 million barrels per day, which means that we cannot rely solely on it. And even when we rely solely on it, we are not able to meet OPEC quota. Even when we think we can rely solely on it, the revenue, it's not predictable because
it's a volatile market.
Things can happen. And of course, there are better countries with more sustainable arrangements, that are thriving in this regard. And we have only one or two buyers you know, if they are not buying, or if they have alternative,
we're stuck.
We are stuck. You know, so it's a very dicey situation. That if we are creating alternatives and we are still paying lip service without alternative, then we are trying to undo ourselves. And no serious government should turn that around.
It's interesting because I mean, I'm wondering, this is a country that's in deficit of public trust. Yeah. Nigerians just take at best the promises made by government with a pinch of salt. Look at Ajakuta that I mentioned at the top of the program just a while ago, and what we're not hearing about that project is that by the time it's fully completed and rolled out altogether, it has capacity for providing, creating at least 500,000 jobs. Yeah. Ajakuta has failed severally under several governments, even right from Obasanjo days. There's been one contract after another, litigation after litigation, and so on and so forth. So how do we also sell this to Nigerians and get positive feedback?
Well, I think it's a very tricky one, but we have to keep trying, choosing the potentials. I don't know if you have visited Ajakuta State Company. If you go to that place, it's actually mind-boggling.
That it is.
Yes. You'll be wondering if you shouldn't take pride in the fact that there's such an edifice exists in this country at all. And of course, you will bemoan the fact that we've not been able to make the best out of it because of mismanagement, the lethargy of government, corruption, you know, and again, back to what I said earlier, the fact that we hardly have people who take Nigeria seriously, you know. But that does not mean we should lose hope, you know, because there's still hope, there's still plenty of reasons, you know, to feel that there's still promise in that place. Promise if management is improved. We've had, like you said, different kinds of agreement, different kinds of PPP arrangement, but none of them has seen the light of the day. But trust deficit here exists between the people and the government, no doubt. But each time we have a new administration, it has a way of giving us a sense of new, fresh beginning. And of course, with every fresh beginning, you should expect new energy. It's only after 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, or 6, 7, 8 years that the government is faltering, then you begin to feel disillusioned once more. But in the circumstance, we have a relatively new administration, and coming up with new initiatives, telling us about sense of urgency. The best we can do is to just refresh our hope and imagining that something new or something serious will be brought to the table such that there can be progress in these sectors.
Now that we're wrapping up, since we're talking the economy now, and of course that's a very fundamental plank in the renewed hope agenda of President Bola Tinubu. He says ultimately the ambition is to make Nigeria a $1 trillion economy. Isn't that a tall order?
With economy, it's about making projections. And when you make that kind of projection, of course, it could probably help you at the level of psychology to initiate programs that will help you build the scenario that you are projecting. There's probably nothing wrong in making that kind of plan, but what you do after that is what matters. It shouldn't just be about mouthing things, you should also working towards it. And we have seen some of his initiatives like this, expatriate employment, trying to get them to contribute more that we're talking about. We have also seen the creation of the marine and blue economy. Right. We have also seen him adding development to aviation. But we are still to see how more development will come from aviation. But what it tells me is that there are new areas that he's looking into, and perhaps he's been going from one progressing country to the other, encouraging them to come and invest. He's been to India, and they told us that about $14 billion US has been promised to us as investment. I don't know if he's still in Saudi Arabia or he has returned. Where
he also has been able to attract some investment in infrastructure.
These are promises that should be followed up. And perhaps he's looking at all those, against alongside those ones, promises that are still on ground, promises from the European Union, from the United States as usual, putting them together. And of course, with our population as well, we could get there. But while being hopeful, we should also lose sight of the many downsides, the many problems bedeviling us, problem of the lack of transparency, the lack of accountability, leakages, wastages, lethargy of public and civil servants, even politicians, and the continuous disposition to prevent that opacity. These are things that should interest the government. And of course, we have more than enough agencies to deal with them. EFCC is there, ICPC is there, the police is there, Code of Conduct Bureau is there, and there are so many of these reform anti-corruption agencies. How well are they doing? And it will lead us to the argument around the need for us to also strengthen our institutions,
right,
so that they can do the job for which they were created, they can fulfill their mandate, and of course get the system to benefit from service delivery in their respective areas.
Prof, I want to say a big thank you to you for sharing these valuable insights with us on the program. I've been talking with Professor Biodun Adeniyi of Base University here, and that's our program for today. Thank you everyone for watching. I'm Muyi Agumofwegbe. I'll see you again.